All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 396 of the Restoring Rapport podcast. This is a podcast for young believers who are pursuing the goal of marriage and family and trying to get married as young as possible in a healthy way. I'm your host, Seth Hensley. I come on twice a week, every week on Thursday and Sunday to discuss not only the benefits of getting married young, but I try to equip and encourage you in your pursuit of that goal. And today we're going to be reviewing an interview between Emma Watson and Jay Shetty on the Jay Shetty podcast that was done about 2 weeks ago. And in this interview, they basically talk about getting married. And Jay poses to Emma some questions that I really want you to hear her answers on, because it's really disturbingly indicative of what the younger generation is starting to think marriage is and whether or not they think it is a goal worth pursuing. I'm also going to go over some stats with you today and talk about the natural conclusion that of going down a road where marriage is not prioritized. And I hope you're at least willing to hear me out on this, because this is something that I'm very passionate about, because marriage really has changed my life and it has been one of God's greatest graces in my life. And so anytime marriage is presented as something less than it is, or even as a bad thing in certain circles, I feel the providential, like the obligation to share my story here on this, because I really do think marriage could change young men's and young women's lives around me for the better if they would simply walk the way that God has designed them to walk. So I hope that you enjoy this, and I hope that it ministers to you. Without further ado, though, let's go ahead and hear what Jay asks Emma here, and let's hear her response, and we'll break it down.
Men marry women hoping they'll never change, and women marry men hoping they can change them. And to me, wanting someone to never change or wanting to be able to change someone are both signs of disrespect, because I think the greatest respect you can have is to respect what this person values in this moment and how that evolves. Yeah. And that's their purpose, their offering, their values. And at no point are you trying to change them. And I've talked about this often, where my wife and I do this exercise with couples when I'm working with them, but I've also done it in our relationship. And I ask people to rank their top 3 priorities in order.
Wow.
And people do it privately and then they share them.
Wow.
And so generally one person will put themselves first, their partner second, and then the kids third. And the other person will put the kids first, the partner second, and themselves third.
Which kind of confuses me, because I don't doubt what he's saying. I'm sure that happens, but it kind of does confuse me, because if you've married this person, you would assume, assuming they've done it right, of course, you would assume that they've had that conversation of what is our priority system, and they would have matching priority systems. I am like, if Lainey and I did this exercise, we would have the same one. And I know that not because I'm taking an educated guess, but because we've had this conversation. God is our top priority, then our spousal relationship, the marriage is our next most top priority, then our children are the next most top priority, and then from there it goes to friends and family. Okay, and this is how, we've already discussed this. This was something that we discussed even prior to getting married. So I'm confused as to how these couples and maybe this is why they're in need of therapy. I don't know. I'm just confused as to why they're not on the same page. I find that very odd. And again, the way to prevent that is by having the discussion prior to entering either a committed relationship or a marriage with your partner, and making sure that you're on the same page as far as your priorities go. And again, I would encourage you young people, don't enter into any kind of committed or defined relationship with anyone unless they're able to match you in interest, investment, commitment, and direction of God for their life. Because if they can't match you in those things, then you're way more invested than they are, and therefore you have a lot more to lose, and they have nothing to lose. And it just seems like a bad relationship to get involved in. It seems like a heartbreak waiting to happen. It seems like you could have so much more, and you could have so much better. And I don't think that that's what God has in store for you, and you're kind of choosing a second best road. So I would just encourage you, make sure your partner is as on board in the relationship as you are, and make sure that they're equally invested and committed to you, and make sure they have that same priority system, and make sure they're following the Lord and just as much as you are, because if not, then again, it's not really gonna, it can't really, there's a mismatch here. There's an imbalance. Jesus would say, like, you're unequally yoked. Okay, so that's going to lead to problems if you're both pulling two different directions on something. I mean, you're supposed to be a unified front. You're supposed to be a united team. We all know a house divided against itself cannot stand. So make sure you are a united front upon making the most important, you know, commitment with a woman that you'll ever make in your
life. And the
life.
person who put themselves third is always mad at the person who put themselves first, because there's this friction of, well, wait a minute, how can you not put the kids first? Well, how can you not put family first, or whatever it may be in your given situation? And the other person's like, well, if I don't put myself first, then what can I give to you all? And that kind of displays this dichotomy and this belief we have around love means complete sacrifice, and love means self-sabotage to some degree, or love means putting yourself aside. And the reality is actually, no, my goal is to make sure that you live your purpose and greatest vision of yourself.
Yes.
And your purpose is to help me do that. And when we both do that, everything's
then it's poetry.
Now, I don't think he's kind of confusing me there too, because the way he phrased that, I don't think is anything different than the scriptural narrative, which is give up yourself, pick up your cross and follow Christ, lay down your life for your partner, give up your life for your friend. I don't really see it. He put it like, you know, my job and my purpose is to make sure you are living out your best life, your best purpose, your best self. And your purpose is to do the same for me. I see that as laying down your life for your partner, and as giving up yourself for your partner, and as picking up your cross for your partner. So he's drawing a distinction there that I don't think necessarily exists. Seems like to me like those sentences mean kind of the same exact thing. It's like, again, you're looking out for your partner. Your priority is making sure that your partner is protected and safe and loved and cared for, and you know, giving of yourself, basically laying down your life so that your partner can have everything he or she needs. I think that's totally the same statement. Maybe you guys heard something different there. If you are picking up on a distinction between what he just said and the scriptural narrative, please let me know in the comments, the YouTube comments. I would love to hear that. But it seemed to me like he was kind of just saying the same thing, and drawing a distinction that's not really there.
My wife practiced that, and she does it naturally. And it's hard to do that in a world that constantly reminds you both that sometimes the other person isn't where you are. Or, you know, the idea of, why haven't you had kids yet? Or when are you going to be in the same country for longer than a month? Or whatever there may be, because it doesn't fit into the norm of what relationships look like.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the norm of what relationships look like in the world today. And it's certainly not everyone having children. If you want to take a look at this chart that I am pulling up for you on your screen, we have an incredibly low birth rate in the country today, a birth rate that is so low we are below replacement level. Okay, so this is United States data, and you can see here this line where my cursor is replacement level. 2.1 children is replacement level, because it takes 2 children to replace the parents that it takes to make 1 child. Or it takes basically 2 children to replace the parents that are making these children. Okay, so this is where it should be in order for us to be replacing ourselves. Anything below this means that we are a declining population. Okay. And so he's acting like everyone's having children. That statement that he just gave, talking about like, why don't you have kids yet? And people asking you this question because it's the social norm is really, I think, incorrect, because it's not a social norm, and people are not asking that question enough because we have such a declining birth rate. I mean, if you look at this right here, this black line, this is the actual general fertility rate. It's down here at like 1.6. Okay, 1.6 is the rate at which couples are having children. 1.6 children per couple is the rate. That's actually, we are not replacing ourselves. So we are a population in decline. In fact, the entire world is like this. The entire developed world, I should say. The entire developed world is like this, except with the exception of Israel. Israel actually has close to a 3-child birth rate. For 3-child fertility rate. Okay, so the families in Israel are having, on an average of 3 children. That's the rate at which they're having children. We are having children at like a 1.6. You can see this black line. I mean, it's not exactly 1.6, but that's as close as I can get to, estimating what it was. Maybe like 1.65, something like that. 1.65 maybe. But again, in order to actually be replacing ourselves, we should be at a 2.1. Or 2. Okay. And so I just don't understand when people make the claim that, it's the social norm that people are pressuring you to have children and that having children is the social norm, because it's not. It's very clearly not. We're not having children at the rate we once did. We're not even having enough children to replace ourselves. So I don't understand the argument that, having children is the social norm and that young people are being pushed to have children. And it's like, even if that's true, even if you got one or two couples being pushed to have children here and there, it's like, that's not the general story of the United States. The general story of the United States right now is people not having children very much at all. In fact, let me show you just another chart here that I was able to find in my country. This is the United States. If you go to the CDC.gov website, you can just look at the fertility rate in all the different states. And if I go to my state, we have a 56.4 fertility rate for out of every 1,000, out of all the women, these are the live births per 1,000 women ages 15 to 44. So out of 1,000 women ages 15 to 44, 56.4 of them are having a live birth. That is actually crazy. And of course, you have your cesarean deliveries, your low birth weight, preterm babies, teen births, unmarried mothers. You can look at all that data here. But for every 1,000 women ages 15 to 44, 56.4 of them, that's the birth rate. Okay, 56.4 out of every 1,000 women. That's not a whole lot. I don't see how you can look at these graphs and be like, oh yeah, having children is normal. Having children is the normal in the country. It's like, it's really not. It should be. It has been in the past. It has been, in different countries and at different times, and even for Israel now. But it's not normal for us presently. So I don't like the claim that he just made there that, it's normal that people are asking, it's the social norm to be having children, because I don't think that's true. And I actually think we're in a state of crisis because that's not true. But let's hear what Emma says in response to this. He's going to actually ask her the question about, marriage in just a second. So listen to her response.
I was thinking about that with you as well. Like, I know you talked about how getting asked the question, when are you getting married?
Yeah.
Or why aren't you married yet?
Yes.
And that's something every woman's hearing. What's your reaction when you hear that?
Okay. First of all, it's not every woman hearing that again. Let's look at the marriage rate. You want to look at the marriage rate? Again, he's acting like marriage is the norm here. We have like close to record lows as far as marriage happening in this country today. Now divorce is down, which is good, but you can't say that, marriage is like the norm again when you see data like this. If you look at this is again this Institute for Family Studies. It's the new census data, key takeaways on divorce, marriage, and fertility in the U.S. It was published on September 22nd of 2022. Very recent data. This is from a trusted source. This is Brad Wilcox. He's a professor of sociology at the University of Virginia. Figure 1.4 of his book, he says U.S. marriage rate close to all-time low in 2021. The number of newly married people per 1,000 unmarried Americans ages 15 and up. Here it's 30 people. Okay, 30 people out of every 1,000 people Americans ages 15 and up are married. Okay, that's not a whole lot. That's not a whole lot. And it's certainly not, the social norm, again, which is the claim he just made, that people are making this claim that marriage is the norm, but it's really not. If you read Brad Wilcox's book, he actually goes into more detail on this, explaining that we have a 49% marriage rate in this country for adults ages 18 and older. So out of all the adults in this country, ages 18 and older, 49% of them are married. That is less than half. And if you rewind back to 1960, we had 80% of adults ages 18 and older married. Okay, so in the last several decades, we have dropped a hugely significant percentage of marriage happening. Like, most people are not married now. It's literally the majority of people, quite literally 51% of them are unmarried, adults ages 18 and up. So again, it's a factually incorrect claim that most people are married, because most people aren't. And again, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think that's a bad thing. We'll get to that later and talk about the effects of marriage on your overall happiness and the likelihood that you have a happy life and the likelihood that you're actually a contributing member of society and doing good things for your children and things like that. But right now, I just want you to understand the claim that marriage is what everyone is being pushed to do and everyone is, everyone is participating in as a social norm is factually incorrect. So I just want to correct him on that before he moves on here, but let's see.
I'm just so happy not to be divorced yet. Like, that sounds like a really negative answer, but I think that we're being pressured and forced into this the, 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 I believe is a kind of miracle
Okay, at least she said marriage was a miracle. You know what? Props to her. I'm going to give her credit for that. I didn't think that's where she was going with it. I thought she was going to present marriage as basically the road to divorce. And she kind of hinted at it there at the beginning of her sentence, but by the end, at least she was saying it was a miracle. But let's look at divorce stats, okay? Because I'm trying to examine all these claims that they're making, so that they're not just claims, that they're actually measurable, okay, in your mind. And divorce is actually down. Okay, so there's this myth going around that there's a 50% divorce rate in this country, which is not true. That number was a projection that was done by a number of studies in the 70s that never turned out to be true. That the real divorce rate is not 50%, but everyone says that it is. It's a big social misconception, and everyone just keeps repeating it because they've heard it and assumes that it's true. But it's not, okay? The real divorce rate is not 50%. It's actually lower than 50%, okay? And most couples are not getting divorced, okay? So anytime somebody presents marriage to you as this inevitable breakup where it's going to be messy and there's lawyers involved that are taking your money and you hate your partner and you're spending time in court fighting against one another, that is not how your marriage has to end. In fact, if you do marriage right, it ends in death. Okay, that's one of the things that's beautiful about it, is it's a permanent relationship. It's not undone by these other things. And if you look at the figure 1.2 here of Brad Wilcox's book, again, this is the U.S. divorce rate down since 1980, the number of newly divorced people per 1,000 married Americans. So this is newly divorced, not just people who have been divorced, period. This is newly divorced people per 1,000 married Americans, is at 13.6. So 13.6 people out of every 1,000 people get a divorce. Okay, now that might seem initially a little bit lower than you would think, but you have to take into consideration that this is per 1,000 married Americans, not per 1,000 married, or per 1,000. Let's see here. No, it is number of newly divorced people per 1,000 married Americans. So this is 13.6 couples. No, it's 13.6 people per 1,000 married Americans get a divorce. So that is a lot lower than I thought. But if you look at here, that is a little, I don't know if I like how that chart is showing it. Let's look at a different one here. Do I have it up here? Yes, I do. Okay, so let me present this screen. If you go to the CDC, this one is up there. Now this one, I'm not sure exactly how, I need to compare these two sources and make sure that they're saying, comparably similar things. Of course, they're not going to say the exact same thing, but they should be saying comparably similar things. You can see in the year 2023, we had 2 million marriages right here in this top corner, out of a 334,914,895 population. So not many marriages. Again, just that further demonstrates the point that marriage is not the norm. And of course, that's total population and not total population of 18, to 55-year-old adults or whatever. But still, 2 million out of every 334 million, or so people are getting married, and 6.1. It's a 6.1 out of every 1,000 total population. So if you have 1,000 people total population, 6.1 of them got married in 2023. And again, that's total population, not just adults, which is why I like Brad Wilcox's stat better earlier, because he's just talking about adults instead of like kids and stuff. But let's look at the divorce. So we had 2,041,000 marriages. In other words, we had a 1,000 out of every 1,000 people, 6.1 got married. This is the divorce and annulment stats. What's on your screen now? So 672,000 in the year 2023, and we had out of 1,000 people, 1,000 total population, 2.4 got a divorce or annulment. Okay. And so divorces, if you were to just to count divorce, it'd be even lower than this, because this is counting annulments too. And if you're wondering what the difference between divorce and annulment is, kind of the simple answer is divorce can be for any reason, and kind of no-fault divorce, for whatever reason you can get a divorce, and then annulments there has to be a big reason for those to actually happen. So it's got to be something serious like infidelity or a huge lie that the marriage was based on or something like that. That's how annulments happen. Divorces happen just because people literally don't work through their problems and they, throw in the towel and quit. But so even if this did not, even including annulments and not just divorces, it is still not 50%, because you see back in this measurement, you had 6.1 out of every 1,000 people getting married, and you have 2.4 out of every 1,000 people getting divorced. Same year, Okay, this is not rocket science. That's less than half. So the claim that 50% of marriages end in divorce, and again, this is annulments and divorces, the claim that 50% of marriage end in divorce is factually incorrect. If you need to look at my sources, you're welcome to, but I mean, it's right here on the screen in front of you, and I don't see anything deceptive about it. I'm being very straightforward with you. I'm making my stats known. And so Emma threw out that claim there that like, she's like, I'm so glad I'm not divorced yet. And it's like, okay, yeah, me too. I'm glad you're not divorced. I'm glad we agree that divorce is a terrible thing. Let's not present marriage as the road to divorce. Let's present divorce as the incorrect road to take once you get married. Okay. And this is a distinction that needs to be made because young people need to know that just because they get married does not mean they're super likely to get a divorce. And we need to teach them that personal responsibility decides which side of that percentage they are on, no matter what. So even if there was only a 2% divorce rate and you are the kind of person who's a quitter, you're going to be on the side of that number where there is divorce. Okay, that's just how the chips are going to fall when everything is said and done. Okay, if you're the person who takes responsibility and who has personal accountability and who decides before he or she gets married, I am not going to get a divorce. I'm going to do whatever it takes to have a positive and good relationship with my spouse. Then guess what? Even if it were, a 90% divorce rate, you would be on the 10% side. Okay. And so I just want that to be clear here. That's how marriage needs to be presented to children. We need to teach them that there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and that they need to choose the right way, not the wrong way. And that marriage is not something they need to throw out the window because it has the possibility of being done badly, because anything in life has the possibility of being done badly. Okay. We need to teach children the correct way to do marriage and that marriage is a beautiful thing, instead of teaching them that, hey, marriage is a terrible thing because some people have done it incorrectly in the past.
I might never be worthy of it. I hope it happens to me, but like, I don't feel entitled to it. Like, it will either be part of my purpose here and my destiny, or it won't.
So she says she doesn't feel entitled to it. She doesn't feel ready for it, or she used that terminology. She doesn't know that it is something for her. It will either be part of her purpose or it won't. I'm kind of just trying to repeat her words to you here, and I don't want to misrepresent her in any way, obviously. But if that's what she's saying here, again, if this is the attitude that you take, then this is how you find yourself single later into life, like single when you're 50 with no prospects to get married. Because what you're doing is you're adopting a passive approach to, a choice that God has designed you to pursue. I would say, Paul claims in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 that it's better to marry than to burn with passion. We have a society in which people are burning with passion all over the place and yet not choosing to get married. It's utterly and blatantly rejecting the scriptural narrative, which is the road to a sexually upright life is through marriage and marriage only. And so we're not, instead of presenting that, it's just kind of like, you do whatever you want. I don't really need marriage. That's not something I'm looking for. If it's, if it happens, it happens. But it's this very passive attitude. We don't have the urgency for it. We don't understand the need for it. We don't understand the point of it. We see bad marriages modeled for us, so we don't pursue it. And I don't know, people are not incentivized. They lack incentive. They lack motive. The carrot has been removed from the stick. Marriage is not seen as the goal that it should be. And, you just have all these people saying this stuff, okay? And so I don't think this is a great thing to say, because, again, if you have this attitude of like, if it happens, it happens, and you're not actually putting in the work, don't expect to get the gold. Like, I don't know why people do this. They go through life, they're like, if it happens, it happens. If I go to college, I go to college. If I get married, I get married. If I get a job, I get a job. If I have children, I have children. Like, it's like, what? Some of those things are good, right? Like, you shouldn't just not do them. And you shouldn't just not seek them and just say, if it happens, it happens, because you could be missing out on something that was really amazing. And so I just don't understand that logic. It's like, why have a passive attitude about it? That passive attitude is talking from somewhere. That passive attitude is coming from a place of either deep misunderstanding about marriage, or a place of having only seen terrible marriages modeled for you, or a fear of the potential heartbreak that a marriage could lead to, or a mistrust of the opposite sex. Like, there's not much that could be coming from, but it's coming from one of those. Okay, I just don't think you should allow that fear or that passivity to rob you of something that has, by the way, like a 545% increase in your chances of being happy on the planet. Like, let's look at another one of Brad Wilcox's stats here, just to show how stark the this impacts your life, and people act like it's like, you can do it if you want. It's just an option. You can get married if you want. We wouldn't say that if we really understood how good for you a happy marriage was. A happy marriage is like the pinnacle of what, how you were able to serve other people, how you were able to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth, how you were able to serve another person in a way that nobody else does, how you're able to build a connection with somebody. It's like the perfect thing. But right here, figure 1.1, marriage predicts happiness better than education, work, and money. Okay. College degree, it boosts your odds of being very happy by 64%. Higher income boosts your odds of being very happy by 88%. Being very satisfied with your work boosts your odds of being very happy by 145%. Being married boosts your odds of being happy by 151%. Okay, and being very happily married, in a very happy marriage, boosts your odds of being married by 545%. So why in the world are we presenting this as an option? It blows my mind today, because it's like, we wouldn't present this as an option if we knew how beautiful it was. Okay. And this is a totally different, this chart right here is a totally different marriage narrative than I think Emma Watson has and a lot of young people have today, where they're like, in marriage, if it happens, it happens. But I'm not really going to look for it. I'm not going to prepare myself for it. I'm not going to, run towards that goal because of how beautiful it is. I'm just going to kind of see if it works out or not, see if it just sort of happens, which, by the way, hard things and good things don't just happen in life. If you just sit on your butt and do nothing, again, that's why I made the claim that you're going to be single at 50 with no prospects. It's just the reward. Like, you sow the seeds, you get the fruit. If you're not looking for marriage, if you're not putting in the work, if you're not making good choices towards marriage, it's not going to happen. Like, you don't just wake up one day with one of these on your finger. Okay. You don't just wake up with a ring on your finger. It's something that happens because you chose to put in the work. It's something that happens because you made good choices. It's something that happens because you decided to live according to the way God has designed you to live and called you to live. And so I don't like this claim. That Emma Watson is making, that you can just sort of get married if you want, maybe not get married if you want. It's like, maybe it'll work out, maybe it'll happen, maybe I'll be mature enough for it, maybe that'll be something that gives me purpose, but maybe not. It's because you're missing out on a huge percentage of happiness, not only for yourself, but a huge opportunity to serve other people, and the closest form of service that through which you're able to impact one person deeper than anybody else, other than, of course, Jesus Christ, I would argue. So again, I just don't like that sentence. She said, maybe you disagree with me. Let me know in the comments. But I so far this interview, I'm not liking how it's not that they're not being combative or anything. They're not assaulting marriage, directly, but they are sort of indirectly undermining the validity and the desirability and the beautiful thing that marriage is, with these comments about like, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. It's not something I really want to pursue. It's not something I have to pursue in order to be happy. It's like, okay, your odds of being happier do really increase if you get married. Let's just be very clear on that. I just gave you a source for it. It's a measurable claim. Again, the claim that I'm not going to be happier if I get married is not a measurable claim. So you can't just buy not measurable claims and reject measurable claims. I don't think it works.
And I think the way we treat it is though, well, why haven't you? And this is something that has to happen in this certain time span and at this certain age and in this kind of way, is like the least romantic thing I can possibly think of.
It doesn't even, okay, romantic, I'm not just talking about, romantic is not, it's a great, beautiful thing, but just because, like, there's a lot about marriage that is not romantic that is also beautiful, okay? And you can't just throw out the whole family building component of a marriage, too, like that, even though there's no romance involved in that, that's a beautiful way through which you can reach future generations and impact children and build a legacy. It's like that, there's no romance in that per se. I mean, there's a romance between you and your partner, but there's no romance between, being a dad. It's just a beautiful, it's a separate thing than romance that is also incredibly fulfilling that God has designed, and you're missing out on that. Again, she's like, it's like, I think she's talking from a place of perhaps there have been people in her life who have pushed her to get married because they care about her and they realize what a good thing marriage can be. And I think maybe that's what's going on here, but she's acting like everyone is in that situation. And it's like, no, most of us aren't even married. And if, like most people are not getting married, most adults are not getting married. There's more adults not married than there are adults married. And so this is not your experience here. And even if it is true, I mean, you're not taking the advice. Even if people are being told at a very high rate that they need to get married, People are not taking that advice. And we see this very clearly in the numbers. So I'm like, and we're seeing also a lot of loneliness running rampant. We're seeing a lot of pornography addiction. We're seeing a lot of sexual dysfunction. We're seeing a lot of sexual counterfeits that are taking advantage of the fact that people don't have the genuine sexual article. And we're seeing a lot of just dysfunction in the world because people are choosing to pursue other roads of romance and sexual intimacy instead of the road that God designed, which is the original good road. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of rambling here, but I just don't like how this conversation is being framed.
Like, truly, like, if I had tried to get married any point, basically before about a year ago, it would have been carnage. I just didn't know myself well enough yet. I didn't have a clear enough idea of what my purpose,
Sheesh.
my vision, like how I was going to be of service. I didn't know where I really felt like I needed to be. I think I have some of those answers now. So when I meet someone, I can say, hi, I'm Emma.
Dang.
This is what I care about. This is where the people I love the most live. This is where it's meaningful for me to be in the world. And then they...
Okay, let's just pause right here again, and I'm going to show you this. This is a blog article that I wrote many years ago, but this is basically detailing the reasons, the arguments that people use against getting married, specifically getting married young, but getting married in general. They use the maturity argument. There's really only a few. They use the maturity argument, they use the financial argument, they use the stability argument, they use the individualistic argument, they use the uniformity argument, they use the singleness argument, they use the procrastination argument. Those are really the only arguments that people use against getting married. I'm just going to briefly go through them here. The maturity argument is people say you're not ready, and it's this argument Emma just used. She said, if I would have gotten married so and so time ago, that it would have been carnage, were her words. She's claiming that she was basically so selfish that in that time ago, that unless I'm misrepresenting her here, you can tell me if you think I'm misrepresenting her, but I think she's claiming that she was so immature and selfish in those years ago that if she were to have gotten married, it would have ended in flames, or it would have been a difficult journey, or have been a wild ride that she was not comfortable with. And it's like, okay, according to that logic, since we're always getting more mature, or at least we're trying to, hopefully you are anyway, there's never a good time to get married. Because you could always be more ready than you are. You could always be more mature than you are. You could be always be less selfish than you are. You could always be more other-centered than you are. You could always have more love in order to give another person than you currently do. And it's like, you can't just put off marriage until you're in the perfect time to get married, because there is no perfect time to get married. You're never going to arrive. You're always going to be getting better. And so you can't use the maturity arguments to encourage people from not getting married. And again, Emma just used that there's the financial argument. People say you need to wait until you're financially independent. Same logic applies. You're always going to be more financially ready 10 years down the line to get married. And but then you're going to miss out on, your fertility window. You're going to miss out on many, many decades that you could have had with your spouse, and many, many memories that you could have made during those years of living happily together, because you were afraid you wouldn't have enough money, or you could have made more money. Again, that's a bottomless pit. You can always make more money. So don't put off marriage just because you can make more money. The stability argument, third argument people use against getting married, they say you need to get your career going first, which kind of goes hand in hand with the money making argument. And this one kind of goes in line with the college thing too. Some people will say you need to have a college experience, that you need to basically live it up in college and have multiple sex partners and go partying and get drunk and all this stupid stuff, honestly, that I don't think has any meaning or value, and is not really the happiest way to live your life. In fact, it's a quite what's the word? It makes you more thirsty. It literally does not satisfy, and it doesn't give you the fullness of what a sexual experience can be, and it doesn't give you any of the joys of an actual intimate relationship, because you're not close to any of these people. And so people who say that you just need to go to college first, again, we just don't value the same things. You value having fun, and I value an actual close relationship with one woman, because that's the only way to have the closest relationship with a human being possible. And so, yeah, anyway, moving on. The stability argument, people say you need to get your career going first. Again, your career is always going to be more developed 10 years down the road. The individualistic argument, you won't be able to have fun anymore. This is just an appeal to selfish nature. This is literally just an appeal to selfish nature. They're just saying you won't be able to have fun if you get married, because having fun, it assumes that having fun is the most important thing in the way that you should spend your life. Again, it's like eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. If that's your philosophy, that's totally not the philosophy that's laid out in Scripture. So again, I'm not going to be able to convince you here if you buy this philosophy, because we disagree on way more fundamental things than whether or not you should get married. We disagree on actually what is a good moral way to live your life. Because if you think having fun is the good moral way to live your life, we have so much in different that I'm not going to be able to find common ground with you enough to have an argument here. But 5, the uniformity argument, people say, what, you should be like everybody else. This is kind of the college experience thing. You should, because I lived it up in college and I didn't get married young, you shouldn't either because it worked out for me. And it's like, well, guess what? I'm not the same thing as you. And maybe I want something a little bit better than you. And maybe I don't want to waste these years with my partner that I could have had. So I'm not going to do that. The singleness argument, don't you want to enjoy your season of singleness? Of course people will throw this one out there again because they perhaps are in a miserable marriage themselves, and that the time of their life when they were single was more fun for them. And again, since they value fun instead of anything else, like multi-generational living or investing in the next generation or building a connection with a woman that lasts, they're not interested in that. So of course they don't understand why you would get married. The procrastination argument, why get married now when you can later? Again, that seems to be just like a reoccurring theme. People are like, you're not ready, you're not ready, you're not ready, you're not ready. It's like, you're never gonna be ready, okay? You're ready when you decide to be ready, okay? And if you don't decide to be ready, then your marriage is gonna fail, or you're not gonna get married. And either way, you miss out on the fullness of what a healthy and amazing romantic connection with a woman can be. I don't like the narrative that's being painted by her here, but let's continue to move on just to see if she kind of works her way out of this.
They can decide whether they can see that there's a way that I can serve what they're trying to do and they can serve what I'm trying to do. But before that, they would have just got a very mixed signal. I mean, there's some parts of me that have stayed utterly consistent, but there are some parts.
Okay, she's just advertising herself here as somebody who is constantly changing, being what Scripture would call double-minded, unstable in all that she does. That's what the book of James would refer to this as. If you're the kind of person who is literally always different and there's nothing about you that remains steady and constant and predictable and secure and safe, then you're not the person that anybody's going to be in a trusting relationship with, because you're dangerous, okay? Unpredictable people who are constantly morphing and changing, even very serious and fundamental aspects of themselves and what God has designed them to be and purpose and stuff like that, they're very dangerous to be in relationship with, because poof, they could just up and move to Virginia when you live in California and you're never going to see them again. Or they could just poof up and leave your relationship because they got some, hankering for ice cream or whatever. They literally are totally unpredictable. It's like, there's no predictability, there's no security, there's no safety there. And so I just would not, again, if you hear people talking like this, they're like, I'm always changing. I'm never the same one day to another. I don't know what tomorrow holds. We'll see if it works out. I don't know if I'll be here in the future, but I am right now. That kind of stuff. Red flags. Please run from that.
I was really still teasing out and figuring out. And I think it's such a violence and it's such a cruelty on people, and especially young people, I think, and especially women, to make them feel like they have no worth or like they haven't succeeded yet in life because they haven't forced to its culmination something that I just don't think can or should ever be forced.
Okay. Wow. Where do we start there? Okay, first of all, she tied a woman's worth is never being called into question here. I'm not presenting marriage as the way in which you get value. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that human rights are tied to your right to be married. That's a ridiculous claim. And if people actually believe that, then somehow it would be totally, socially acceptable and totally not against your conscience at all to just massacre anybody who you didn't like who was under the age of 18 and unmarried. A person's value is not tied to the fact that they are married or not. That has nothing to do with it. I don't know why she's perceiving that. Now, there's maybe some part of her story or something that somebody said to her at some time where she's perceived that they were saying her worth was tied to her, whether or not she was married, but that's never what I've presented, okay? That's not what anybody I know has presented. People who I know who are really passionate about getting people married are doing so not because they're worthless if they don't, but because marriage has such happiness potential for those individuals, and we care about people, okay? We're not saying that you're not valuable if you choose not to get married. We're simply encouraging you that marriage can be a beautiful thing, and that if you choose to run from it out of, again, either fear of failure or mistrust of the opposite sex, or the fact that you've seen poor marriages modeled for you in the past and you don't think that there's a right way to do it, you could be missing out on one of the most beautiful things that there is in life that God has created. And so I'm so passionate about this, and I don't understand how she's tying worth to this. Like, I don't know where that's coming from. Maybe it's she used the phrase, we present it like you haven't, to young women, like you haven't succeeded unless you choose to get married. She kind of threw that in there. And I don't think it's even a success thing. I don't think now some people define success as, yes, like being able to serve their spouse and their children well, and the happiness that is only possible through a happy marriage and family. And I see the value in that, but I also don't, the way she's defining success, it's just like an individual thing. Like, I'm a failure if I don't get married. It's like, that's not what I'm saying. And I don't know I don't know how people like me have come across like that. If they've approached this conversation in the correct way. Again, it's not tied to your value. That we're not saying it has nothing to do with your value. I'm saying this is a matter of purpose. She's talking into a mic right now that says on purpose, like the word purpose. That is something that you don't get to choose. That's something about that God gets to choose. God has structured this world to work in a certain way, and you don't get to decide what choices in life lead to the good life. You don't get to decide what choices in life lead to the gold, lead to the treasure. You get to decide whether or not you walk down the road that leads to the good life, whether or not you walk the straight and narrow that leads to treasure. Okay, that's what you get to decide. And so God has designed a world where it is a fact that you are more likely to be married, and there are more service opportunities available to you, and you can impact other people's lives in a greater way on average if you are married than if you are not. That is a simple fact, and I am firmly convinced in my heart of that, okay? And so I don't understand when people, again, present this like option here. They're like, you can get married or not. I don't know if I will or not, but people are like pushing me to, and it makes me feel like my value is not there. And it's like, that's not what we're saying. I don't know how to say that in any more clear way, but I've done my best.
It's something that, like, honestly, I feel like I've had to earn, I've had to work for, to be in a place where I feel like I can look someone in the eye and be able to tell them who I am, and to have some idea, and it will change and grow of what I want and what I'm here to do. That takes work. Like, I have like really sat with myself in a lot of discomfort and asked myself a lot of very difficult questions to be at that point. It hasn't happened to me yet.
I do think everyone's...
Okay, stop. It hasn't happened to me yet is a wild claim. You don't just happen to be married. Again, you don't just wake up with one of these on your finger. You either choose to make choices to get married, or you don't. So when I talk to people who present it like this, it's like, it hasn't happened for me. And maybe she was saying something else. I could be misrepresenting her here. I don't want to do that. But if she's saying marriage just hasn't happened to me yet, my natural response is, of course it hasn't, because you haven't done it. Like, it's something that you choose to do. It's not something that just falls in your lap. Like most good things in life, you don't just get them by turning a certain age or waiting a certain XYZ amount of time, to use her British, speech. It's something that you either choose or don't choose. Okay. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, good things in life you have to work for, you have to strive for, you have to make choices for. You can't just wait. And again, that's again one of the reasons why I get so tilted when people say, like, you're just not ready for marriage. It's like, okay, on your current course, you're never going to be ready for marriage. Because if you just sit and keep making the same choices you're making now, you're going to be in the same situation a decade down the road. Like, if you're not ready for marriage, get ready, like right now. You don't just keep living, waiting, elapsing time and expecting anything to change. That's insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is insanity. Okay, so like, if you want to be ready for marriage, I mean, again, you can never be totally ready. You can always be better. But if you want to be, in a marriage, then get married and make the right choices. That's all there is to
worthy
it.
of love. But I don't think that's what you're saying either. Yeah.
I think so.
That's fine. Yeah.
I guess maybe, like, partnership or marriage, I guess, is what we're both saying, is like almost a different game. Like it's almost a different playing field, actually. Like actually co-joining and like properly sharing your life with someone and being in partnership with them seems like it's its own thing.
It is. It takes so much work, and it takes so much adjustment and adapting more than compromising and sacrificing. But there's so much flexibility. There's so much allowing. It's so different at different times. Like sometimes patience looks like being by that person's side and saying nothing. Yes. And sometimes patience means being halfway across the world and not communicating. Yes. And sometimes patience looks like talking and listening. Like, you know, it's patience doesn't look like one thing over a lifespan. And there are parts of my wife that have stayed exactly the same in 12 years, and there are parts that have completely changed. And I have a choice every time that happens to learn to love the new or not. And that's a choice I have to make, and she has to make as well. And so there's so much constant choosing and constant evolving that it's very easy to just, it's very easy to be like, I chose them the day we got married. And people always ask me that. I'm like, I don't think I even knew who my wife was the day we got married. Like now when I think about it, it's like I loved her, but I had no idea. And
no, I do. See, again, I don't like this either now. And I feel like I've just gone through slamming this interview. I'm not trying to slam this interview. Like, I mean, they seem both like very cordial people and, you know, very agreeable and good natured and all that. And that's awesome. I just don't like narratives that encourage people away from marriage because of what marriage has done for my life. I am so in love with my wife, and my life has so much meaning and opportunity for the intrinsic reward that comes through serving her. That now that I'm married, and I was so lonely before. I mean, it was just so awful. And I mean, and I had a good life before. I'm not saying I just had an awful life. I'm just saying it's a worlds apart. Like I would never go back on my choice to be married. It's just an amazing thing that I want for, you know, that I want other people to experience. And so when people present these narratives, I want to say something. And I don't want you guys to think when he talks about this, about his wife changing and him having to decide every day that he's going to continue to stay with her and love her. Even though he might not feel like it because she's changed from yesterday. I don't want you to feel like your partner is not going to be the same person that you married. Because my wife, I've been married now for almost 2 years, and that's not a whole lot of time, but I've got years down the road, and I'll see you in, 5 years, and I'll probably still be saying the same thing because I know my wife. But my partner Lainey doesn't just change from one morning to the next. She has things about her that do not change. And I think that's one of her most amazing qualities. It's because I can, that it makes up a connection possible where there is trust, because I'm not always afraid of her dipping or leaving or becoming some incredibly rude or angry or frustrating person that I don't know, because I know that she has the predictability that I need. Well, not even that I need, but that makes a, easier connection possible. And so I don't want you guys to buy that here, but I think I'm going to wrap up this interview here. I've been going for about 45 minutes. So, and by the way, if you've wondered why there's like a bunch of boxes in the background of, maybe you don't even see the boxes, we'll see how I edit this video. But if you've been wondering why there's a bunch of boxes in the background, we're in the process of closing on a house. We should be moved in by October 24th. We are so excited. It has been a crazy journey. I'd like to do an episode for you, just kind of going through the house buying process and talking about, why we decided to buy instead of build and things like this. But for now, I just want to let you guys know. So maybe couple, maybe 1 or 2 podcasts more, you'll be seeing this room. But after that, it'll be a totally different room. I'll have an actual office instead of this small, room in our apartment. And so, thank you guys so much for listening today. I'm going to close it up there. Let me know what you thought of this interview between these two individuals, especially just the things that Emma Watson said. If you think, what your thoughts on her statements were, I would love to hear from you. It'd make me feel super connected to you guys as audience members, and it would make this podcasting system two-way instead of a boring monologue. Thank you so much for listening. Don't reach out through a voice message if I said that. Comment through the YouTube show notes or through a private message to the podcast on Instagram or Facebook. We would love to hear from you there. So thank you so much for coming today. God bless you, and I will talk to you next time.